Last week it was consensus. This week it is unanimous. Arkansas is the number one baseball team in the country. The Razorbacks are 10-0 as they go to Louisiana Tech this week for their first real road test of the 2021 season. Should be a good one. Louisiana Tech is 8-3 this season, and they'll enter the series on a 4-game win streak. The Razorbacks, of course, 10-0, 14 straight wins going back to last season. That's the longest win streak for the Razorbacks in 25 years. This week on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, we're going to talk to Troy Eklund, a former Arkansas All-America outfielder, about this season's team. Troy, of course, does the games for the Razorbacks on their SEC Network Plus broadcast. He'll be in Ruston, Louisiana this week, calling the games along with Brett Dolan on Cox Sports TV and ESPN Plus. We'll get his thoughts, as we said, on the Razorbacks, also on Louisiana Tech. Also, we'll talk to Louisiana Tech coach Lane Burroughs. Burroughs is one of several Dave Van Horn assistants who are Division I head coaches now. He is in his 5th year with the Bulldogs, and that's been an entertaining series. We'll take a look back at some of the past games between the Razorbacks and the Bulldogs. But first, a message from our sponsor, Massage Envy.
Massage Envy has been voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. Great therapists and estheticians go along with a new service that I am truly excited about. Rapid Tension Relief uses a special tool that will melt the tension and soreness away. Trust me, you will not be disappointed in the results. I highly recommend this feature along with a total body stretch assisted stretch program. Whether you are competing at a high level or just want to relax, these services are for everyone. Massage, rapid tension relief, total body stretch, deep muscle treatment massage, you choose. Or you can try any combination of those. So the next time you're feeling tight, make sure to call my friends at Massage Envy.
This is the first time since 2003 that Arkansas is 10-0 in a season. That was Dave Van Horn's first year as the Razorbacks head coach. Kind of hard to believe that they haven't gotten to this point again throughout all those other years, but I think it goes to show how tough it is to get to 10-0 in a season. A lot of times you play easier competition, but it doesn't mean that they're all just pushovers and cupcakes. And I think Arkansas has found that out this year. I mean, they've won their games, but of course we knew that the teams they played in Arlington were very good. But I've been really impressed, Seth, with the teams that we've seen the last 2 weeks: Southeast Missouri State and Murray State. Both teams out of the Ohio Valley Conference. That's not a bad baseball league. We had Mike Rooney on our podcast last week to tell us what he thought about the Ohio Valley, and he had good things to say about it. Said it was a strong baseball league. SEMO was picked 5th in the league. Murray State was picked 3rd in the league in the preseason. I don't know if preseason rankings are real trustworthy this year, just with all of the uncertainty that surrounds the game, both in the players returning, and of course, you could potentially play a weekend without a quarter of your roster or something. But it looked to me like SEMO and Murray State were really good teams. And it wouldn't surprise me to see either one of those in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. It's something that's maybe happening all throughout college baseball. We're obviously focused on the Razorbacks, and so we focus on who they're playing and their opponent. But I think we've mentioned it a few times now, with the rosters getting another year of guys that are older, you have experienced guys on rosters that are like a Murray State and like a SEMO that they've been around the block. So yes, the fact that they are playing against the Razorbacks is going to be tough, but there's just not anything that they haven't seen. They're not new coming out of the high school level up to the college level. And I think it's made a difference. And Louisiana Tech is no different. They're an older team that the Razorbacks will have to play this week.
We'll talk about the Murray State series here in just a second, but real quick, SEMO right now, 28 RPI going into games this weekend. That's up 2 from middle of the week when SEMO didn't even play. They've got the number 28 RPI in the country, and I know it's early for RPI, and that RPI is going to fall as they start playing teams from the Ohio Valley Conference, unless they win all their games, in which case, they'll continue to have a high RPI. But that's a higher RPI than TCU, who was number 33. It's a higher RPI than Murray State by almost 100 points, maybe over 100 points. And then at the last time I checked, Texas Tech and Texas were in the 60 or 70 range in RPI. So right now, SEMO, with 4 wins over SEMO, those are 4 Quadrant 1 victories for Arkansas. If they continue to play at this level, and again, they're only 5-6, but if they continue to play at a high level throughout the season, and I think they will, they left Fayetteville, and I think they won 3 of 4 games since that series. that's going to be a really notable win, I think, for the Razorbacks later in this season. I don't expect it to remain a quadrant one victory, but if they go into the Ohio Valley Conference and win a lot of games, it may be a quadrant two victory. It may be one of those things where, it's a resume builder.
Right.
And so, instead of maybe being the number, who knows how this is going to work out, but maybe instead of being the number 4 national seed, you're the number 3 national seed because of a game against SEMO. I think they've played really good competition in the non-conference. I think Louisiana Tech, fits that bill too. This is a tough schedule, and I think it's really Dave Van Horn said this after Sunday's game. I think to be 10-0 against this schedule really says a lot about the program.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, the name recognition may not be there with Murray State and SEMO, but they are quality teams with a background of winning games this year. So I think that it is a tough schedule, and it only is going to get tougher with Arkansas playing in the SEC, and then in the fact of that they're going on their first true road test. Going down to Dallas is good because you get to go on the bus and you kind of get some of that away game routine going. But to really be on the road to where you're going to be the visiting team on the scoreboard all 3 days, you're going to have to figure out how to play at a different park all 3 days. I think it'll be good for the Hogs before they get into conference play. And Louisiana Tech is not a team at all that you can overlook, especially in their own ballpark. They're going to give the Razorbacks a run for their money every single game. And so I think Van Horn, in a pandemic, did a Mike Neighbors-esque job of scheduling in the non-conference, just to throw in Arkansas's women's basketball coach there and the fact that his non-conference scheduling.
Now, of course, a lot of these games were scheduled before they even knew about the pandemic. SEMO was a late ad. They were going to play Cal State Northridge, who's coached by Dave Serrano, the former coach at Tennessee and Cal State Fullerton. And basically, Northridge didn't know if they could get out of California and come here for the series. They backed out. I think SEMO had a game drop or series drop, and then they were able to schedule 4 games. One more note on RPI, 2 more notes actually. Texas is 52. Texas Tech is 63 in RPI. Louisiana Tech going into this weekend 35.
Wow.
So again, it's a chance before you even get to the big boys in the SEC. Arkansas is going to play 3 of the teams that are in the top 5 right now, plus a ton of other top 25 teams from the conference. This is a resume. And if you win on the road, it is a bigger plus to your RPI.
Yeah.
And if you lose on the road, it's not as big of a detriment to your RPI. So good opportunity, I think, for the Razorbacks this weekend down in Ruston. As we said, we're going to talk to Troy Eklund a little bit later. Troy's going to be calling the games for Cox Sports TV and ESPN Plus. Talk to him about this upcoming series. And we spoke yesterday with Lane Burrows, the Louisiana Tech head coach, got his thoughts on his team and on the Razorbacks. Let's take a look back, though, real quick at last week, Seth. A few things that jumped out to us. And, I think the first thing that stands out to me is that Arkansas is starting to get really good production at the top of the order. Christian Franklin had a really good game against Murray State. I think it might have been game 2 when he went 3 for 4, had the bases clearing double. That was really the big hit in that game. And then Robert Moore. I mean, what can you say about what Robert Moore has done in these last couple of games or last few games? He started out really, really poorly. I think he was batting under 100 when they came home from Arlington. And I'm not sure it got much better through maybe the first game of SEMO. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I don't know that he got a hit in the first game of SEMO, but he broke through last week and you could kind of see
toward the end of the SEMO series, he started to get on base more. But anyway, in the Murray State series, 7 for 12, 2 home runs, 4 RBI, 5 runs scored. He also walked twice and had 2 stolen bases. Those are the types of numbers that you expect from Moore. And it kind of is playing out like last season. They played Eastern Illinois. I don't think he played particularly well in that series. And then Gonzaga came in. He got hot, took it to Houston. Who knows what he could have done if the season was allowed to have continued. But these are now he's batting .375. That's what you expect to see from Robert Moore. And what a boon that is to your top of your order You've got a 375 hitter in the leadoff spot. Christian Franklin, I think he's batting somewhere in the 330, 340 range in the number 2 hole. Matt Goodhart is giving them pretty good production from the 3. He didn't do as well against Murray State as he did the week before or in his first couple of games against Southeast Missouri. But I think you're just starting to see this line. There's some holes in it still that there's, needing to figure out. But you're seeing really good production, especially out of the top of the order right now for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I thought so. Robert Moore was just a guy, because he did struggle in Arlington, but that was just a guy that nobody in Razorback Nation was really worried about.
Yeah.
Because you just knew what he could do, and you knew that eventually he would get it turned on. His resurgence is going to be key for the Razorbacks. He can't be in the top of the order and not be a threat.
Yeah.
And he is. So I think that'll play out over the season. He'll have his ups and downs, but he is your prototypical leadoff man in the fact of he has a good eye. He's not afraid to take pitches. He swings
just a
good
smart
pitches.
baseball player.
And man, he's quick on the base pass too.
Mm-hmm.
He can steal some bases. I thought something else in the lineup, you talked about it last week, Matt, was Jacob Nesbitt is not going to not hit. Eventually, I know that was like a double negative there, which is great English, but eventually he's going to hit, and he showed out in a big way in the one game that he's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's still not necessarily going to translate into him playing every single week, but you're just not going to keep a talented player like Jacob Nesbitt, who we have seen can hit. You're not going to keep him down into the no-hit range for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And his one hit was a huge 3-run home run.
Yeah, 3-run home run in that Murray State game. 6-0 win for the Razorbacks to close out the series against the Racers. That game, I've been impressed with them on a lot of levels. I've really been impressed with the comebacks. I mean, right now they've won 5 of their 10 games, or in 5 of their 10 victories, they have either trailed by 3 or more runs, or they have come back from an 8th or 9th inning deficit. And in some games, both. They trailed Texas Tech by 4 runs midway through that game, a little over midway through that game. They came back from a 9th inning deficit. So they did that against Murray State a couple of times. They were down by 3 in game 1, came back and won. Of course, Robert Moore had the 2 big home runs in that game. Game 2 got down 4-0, came back and won fairly easily. I would say 11-6, and then won 6-0. But what they did in the finale is that they won while being able to sit some of their starters. Casey Opitz didn't play in that game. They moved around some players, took Brady Slavens into the outfield, put Colin Smith at first base, and were able to bring in Jacob Nesbitt. They played Dylan Leach, 2 in that game. And they're able to give Caden Wallace a day off. Just the fact that they're able to win while giving some of their starters a day off. Yeah, I'm not going to say that they wanted to lose that game or that they expected to lose that game, but sometimes when you do that, I think as a coaching staff, you're saying, okay, here's your opportunity, but you're also saying, okay, we've won the series. That's the main prerogative. And, if we lose, we lose, but we're going to get some guys some playing time. And so to win convincingly, I think that's impressive.
I think so too. I think that it just shows you the depth that is on this Arkansas Razorback team.
Yep.
In the fact of, it doesn't matter who is out there. There are guys that are going to get an opportunity, and it's got to be reassuring for Van Horn. It's as a Razor, if you put yourself in the Razorback fan's shoes, it's got to be reassuring for you as well that an injury is not going to devastate this team.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
potentially,
to the wrong guy it might. If you Friday night guy and Peyton Pallette, who is in all signs are pointing to him being the Friday night guy. He's going to be the Friday night guy against Louisiana Tech. If he goes down, he's throwing 96. He's hit 96. So, I mean, yeah, you don't want those guys to go down, but also there are options. The fact of that Robert Moore is playing at second base right now, I think shows you the depth of the options that Arkansas has, because Jalen Battles is just so talented that Robert Moore didn't need to switch over to shortstop in the offseason because Jalen Battles was that good with the glove. Arkansas brought in that kind of talent.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas has that kind of talent all around, and I think that it's got to be fun for Van Horn as well. It's going to be stressful trying to pick out the right guys, and then if you lose a game, you're always going to have second guess, well, maybe should I have brought this? But at the same time, it's got to be fun of like, hey, I got this weapon that I can choose from if they're throwing a lefty. I got this I can choose from if they're throwing a righty. It's not one of those, Arkansas's had a rosters at a time that these were the 9 and these were going to be the 9 regardless of who was out there because they were the 9 best and they separated themselves from the rest. And that's just not the case this year.
2 more notes before we get to Troy Eklund. In left field, I think Zach Gregory is their left fielder until he's not.
Yeah, poor Braden Webb. He can't hit.
Well, Braden Webb struggled. I think he's 1 for 18 at this point in the year. Gregory is not hitting great. I think he's batting about 300 and I don't know, and that may only be in like 10 at-bats, 10 official at-bats. But what he's doing, he's getting on base. He's walked 6 times. He's been hit by 3 pitches. There was a stretch during the Murray State series where he had been on base 7 consecutive plate appearances. And I think during those 7 plate appearances, I think there may have only been 1 hit, which was a solo home run in Game 2. Right now, he's got the team's highest on-base percentage at .632. Among everyday players, I think Casey Opitz is second at .471. So now, Gregory, quite a few fewer plate appearances than Opitz, and I understand that. But what he's doing for him, Seth, is that he's doing a good job in the 9-hole primarily of setting the table for the top of the order, and Moore and Franklin and Goodhart, to a lesser extent, are doing a great job of driving them in.
Yes, he can set the table, and he's doing it. I think that's what you want out of a guy towards the bottom of the order. You're not expecting a gap-to-gap hitter. You're just expecting somebody to get on base and make it difficult. Because once you get a guy on base, that shortens everything up in the infield. Guys have got to get into double play depth. Just make things happen. Baseball is all about making things happen, putting the bat on the ball and seeing what happens. And Gregory has done a good job of staying in the lineup and just making things happen.
Mm-hmm. I think he's done a pretty good job defensively, too. I mean, made some good reads on windy fly balls in the Murray State series. He hasn't been a liability in left field.
Right.
And so I think he's going to keep that job for a little while. I don't know that he's going to be an everyday starter. I think there's still going to be some cycling in and out at those 2 corner outfield positions to get players playing time, especially if you get into a situation where you do have a 2-0 lead in a series, or maybe you're playing the back end of a midweek series like they're going to do here pretty soon against Memphis at Baum-Walker Stadium. But I think that as long as he can continue to get on base like he is, it doesn't matter if he's got a 300 average. The .632 on base percentage is really impressive, I think, for him.
The one thing with Gregory is when the fly ball is hit up to him, do you hold your breath like you did freshman year Heston Kjerstad?
I don't think so.
So I think as long as you can keep hitting, getting on base 600%.
I always felt like Kjerstad got a little bit of a bad rap. He made some mistakes. Man, he made some great plays that year, too.
He brought that one back against South Carolina in the Super, right?
It was against Dallas Baptist. Yeah, it was in the regional championship. In fact, it was Dallas Baptist's best hitter, and I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but he was like a 400-something hitter. I think he got drafted by the Red Sox in maybe the 8th round and took away a home run, and that was a big play in that game because that was a fairly low-scoring game.
Yeah, and it was. I still hold my breath.
Yeah, so, but he made a great – and then the other play I remember that season – actually, I remember two more in the postseason. In Omaha, both of them. One was, I think, against Texas on day 1. He made a catch – or maybe it was against Texas Tech in game 2. One of the two, he made a catch up against the wall where his hat and his sunglasses flew off because of the force that he hit the wall with. Held on, great catch up against the wall. And then – a play that I always thought was really underrated, somewhere middle innings, late innings, maybe 7th inning against Oregon State. The wall in Omaha has got some weird angles to it.
It does.
And an Oregon State player, I don't remember who it was, hit one down the line. It hit the edge of that wall, and he played that ball perfectly and threw out the runner at second base. And it was a huge play in the game. Of course, that was a low-scoring game too. Had they get a guy on at second right there, who knows what might have happened in that inning. Of course, gave him the chance to, be one win away from winning the championship. I just thought that, he made a really nice play there. So I get it. Everybody likes to, to get on Kerstad, rag on him, but I thought he made some really good defensive plays his freshman year. I thought he made some really good ones his sophomore year too.
I still held my breath. His sophomore year when he moved to right, I think that it was better.
Probably it might have been. Might have been better for him.
I don't know either because what was that, like 16 games in?
Yeah.
So.
Well, the final thing before we get to Troy Eklund, Seth, is starting pitching. That's I don't know that I even would say it's the concern for this team right now because of the way the bullpen is pitching when starters are not able to go the distance, go well into games. Of course, I think Peyton Pallette, you mentioned this, he's going to be their Friday starter, maybe all season. He's pitching really well. Everybody I talk to, and you're going to hear Lane Burrows say this a little bit later, everybody compares him to Walker Buehler. Everybody. I mean, it's like this universal comparison that he's getting right now. And obviously, really high praise. I think he's their Friday guy. I think Lyle Lockhart is their Sunday guy for the time being. Who knows? Maybe at some point during the season, they move him up into a Saturday role. But I think right now, I think that this coaching staff likes having those two anchors.
I agree.
We know what we're going to get out of the Friday guy for the most part. Doesn't mean he's not going to struggle. We know we're going to get out of the Sunday guy for the most part. And then in the middle, it's going to be Zebulon Vermillion again this week. Hey, if he can give you 4 innings, great. If he only gives you a couple and you got to use the bullpen, then you know what you got to do going into Sunday's game, from a pitching perspective. Or you at least know what you've got, behind Lyle Lockhart. And so, I think that they've given them kind of, like I said, kind of anchors on either end of the weekend, and then gives them some time to figure out what they're going to do on Saturdays. But the bullpen, in my opinion, is pitching really well. Doesn't mean that everybody's coming in. And we've seen some guys, struggle to throw strikes. But with the expanded roster, I think they've thrown 18 or 19 pitchers now this season. They're going to travel, I would guess, at least 2 more pitchers, if not 3, with the expanded SEC rosters. Used to, you could take 27 players. You can take 30 this year. And so, you've got the decision, do we want to load it up with 3 extra pitchers or is there an extra position player that we want to take on the road? I don't know, how that's going to work out. But I think they're definitely going to have more pitchers at their disposal on the weekends for Southeastern Conference Series. And so, but between what I've seen from Patrick Wicklander, Connor Noland, I know he struggled somewhat the other day, but Van Horn, I was interested to hear him say that he thought he pitched well, even when he only got 1 out in 4 batters faced against Murray State. I think he threw real well in his first outing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Blake Adams came in, pitched really well the other day. Jackson Wiggins has been the best pitcher on the team, maybe, phenomenal. At least in what he's been asked to do. Mm-hmm. I think he's thrown 38 pitches and retired 9 batters. Hasn't allowed a base runner.
That's pretty good.
Kevin Kopps. I mean, look at what Kevin Kopps has done since that Texas Tech game. He's got 13 strikeouts in his last 6 innings. I mean, he's pitching really, really well for him. So I like the bullpen. And if you can't get a long outing out of one of your starters, I think you've got a little bit of comfort there in knowing that, hey, we've got some options behind them to where maybe we don't have to have 3 starters who go 5, 6, 7 innings in a game.
Is this one of those situations to where, kind of like you were saying, Matt, you don't have to have a guy on Saturday go 6 innings, because if he only goes 2 or 3, you have 3 other long relievers that could rotate in there in that starting spot. And the 3 guys that started in the weekend series last year, or any other guys that they want to try and throw in there, like a Caleb Bolden.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Caleb Bolden. He's now a bullpen guy because he's not in the starting role.
And that can give you 4 options out of the bin for long relievers, not just guys that can come in a situation, just long relievers, guys that have started before. Arkansas was pretty successful without a really prominent Sunday guy in 2018. Isaiah Campbell was not the Isaiah Campbell in 2019. Isaiah Campbell, when he took the mound in 2018, you held your breath. And Arkansas showed that they could be successful with a guy like that on one day. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that spot kind of rotates through.
Some of their best teams have been like that. I mean, some of their, I think back to 2004, they would pitch Jay Sawatsky on a Friday night, and if he didn't throw too many pitches as a closer, he'd come back in as a starter a lot of times on Sunday. I think they did a similar deal with Barrett Aston one year. Randall Fant in 2012, you never knew what he was going to give you. He was always really good one time through the order. And so sometimes he'd get you to the fourth inning one time through the order. And then, sometimes it wouldn't go so well because he would walk guys. And so, some of their best teams have had that issue. And again, it goes back to what we said last week. It's college baseball. Teams are going to have warts. You know what I mean? We're not talking about the Yankees or these are college baseball players. These are teams that are going to have some weaknesses, and they're going to have weaknesses even into June when they're playing in the regionals and the super regionals and in the College World Series. But I like Arkansas's pitching staff. I think they're pitching really well, and I think the bullpen is pitching pretty well. You think back to the Murray State series last week. I think they threw 7 1/3 in Game 2. And then came in and pitched 2 runs in Game 2 is what the bullpen gave up in 7 1/3, and then they pitched 4 scoreless innings in the finale on Sunday. Don't have the bullpen numbers in front of me, but I think overall their ERA is very low, and if you take out the Texas Tech game in the season opener, it's incredibly low because they did struggle that night, but they've been pretty consistent since that point. So we told you we're going to bring in Troy Eklund now. Troy is a former Razorback outfielder, one of the Razorback greats from those teams in the late 1980s under Norm DeBryan. He has been for the last 3 years on the SEC Network Plus broadcast with Brett Dolan. And this weekend, he and Brett will travel down to Ruston and call the 3 games between the Razorbacks and the Bulldogs on Cox Sports TV and ESPN Plus. Troy, we appreciate you taking some time to join us today.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt. Enjoy being with you.
So Troy's you're a former Razorback All-American. You've had one of the best seats in the house as Dave Van Horn has really, I think, built this program to a level that even he didn't have it maybe his first 10 or so years. I just wonder what you've thought as you've watched the evolution of the program. Really, I guess since that real disappointing season in 2016, they've been on quite the trajectory.
Yeah, I think so. Coach Van Horn, he's incredibly motivated to bring a national championship not only to the university and to the state of Arkansas, but also for Coach DeBryan, who he played for 1 year, and then Coach Sender as a graduate assistant. So phenomenal recruiting on his part, and him getting some great assistance and their great job of analyzing talent. And it's a tough thing to do in baseball because you're having to check out kids that are 14, 15 years old and try to project what they're going to look like, 4 years down the road when they graduate high school.
You were on one of those teams, or maybe a couple of those teams where Dave was a GA. What was Dave Van Horn like as a graduate assistant?
He was super motivated, a great teacher. He was the infield coach and worked with the middle infielders, worked with hitting as well. And he was super competitive. He loved the Fall World Series because Coach DeBryan would allow the assistants to manage the teams. And so he usually got to manage one of the teams. And he was determined to win the World Series, which he did almost every time that he coached. You
and Dave are from kind of the same area, Kansas City area. That's been an area where the Razorbacks have done so well in recruiting over the past few years, and you see that this year, with Brady Slavens and Christian Franklin and Robert Moore. Zeb Vermillion is in the starting rotation. What have you thought about the way that he's put an emphasis on Kansas City? Because it seems to me like that's an area that is really a fertile baseball area, but may get forgotten by some. Just because it kind of seems like there's not really a campus nearby, but there's not a better option, I would think, for those Kansas City players than the U of A, some 3-hour drive away.
Oh, I think so. I mean, there's a ton of baseball talent in that area. I think that Dave's done an outstanding job of recruiting that whole entire area, and it's amazing how word spreads. It spreads like wildfire when you have some kids that, all those kids know each other from travel ball and high school baseball and all that. And so when one kid has success and goes to a school, it immediately turns into a pipeline. But yeah, he's definitely taken advantage of that area. And over the years, it's been a great recruiting ground for Arkansas baseball.
So let's talk about this year's team. They're 10-0, obviously ranked number 1. It would be tough to keep that ranking all season with the way baseball works. You know, teams are going to lose games. But what have you seen through 10 games about this team? What are some of the things that stand out to you, characteristics that you think maybe make this a World Series type team?
Well, first of all, I 100% agree. It definitely is a Omaha World College World Series quality team. I think that it's a good combination of some veterans, guys like Zebulon Vermillion, Kevin Kopps, especially Casey Opitz, who's an incredible leader for the team. And then with sprinkled in with some of the young talent, you know, you can almost still call Robert Moore, since he only had a half season last year.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Caden Wallace and just some newcomers. Cullen Smith is more of a veteran, but newcomer to Arkansas, Brady Slavens. So I think that just that the mix of youth and experience is going to be critical. I think that some of the things I've seen out of this team, it's a team with that experience. It's kind of a never panic, we're never out of a ball game team. I've heard Dave talk about that on multiple interviews, and just what I've seen out of that team. Well, I'll be able to kind of look down the dugout as the ball game's going on. You don't ever see panic out of their team. You don't see like the team meetings that said, hey, we got to get everybody fired up and rally back in this game. It's just kind of like they expect to win. And I think that's the biggest character I've seen in this team is that expectation to win.
If you're in the opposing dugout and you see like this happened maybe a couple times against SEMO, I know it happened a couple times against Murray State, you're up 3 runs in the late innings, and the other team comes back and beats you, or they overcome a 4-run deficit like they did in the second or third inning of the Murray State game. I mean, how demoralizing is that, you think, if you're in that opposing dugout?
I think that's really tough, and if I'm on the opposing team against Arkansas, this year's team, it's almost like not if but when it's going to happen. So you know that this team's going to rally, that they're going to hit some home runs. They're going to hit. It seems like their biggest clutch ability so far this season is being able to capitalize with runners in scoring position. They have done an excellent job this year. If they get guys on base, they're driving them in. And again, the team's average is under 300 for as good of a team as they are. I still don't think they're clicking on all cylinders, even close to their abilities. But they've drawn a lot of walks. The guys have been real patient at the plate, and just getting those free base runners has been outstanding for this Razorback ball club. And I think that's the thing. You talk about demoralizing. You know it's coming. You know that they have that potential at any time to put up crooked numbers on the board and score 3, 4, 5 runs in an inning.
Yeah, you mentioned getting on base. Zach Gregory is one that kind of stands out to me in that sense. He almost reminds me of a Moneyball type player. His batting average isn't great. I think he's 3 for 10 in the games where he's gotten to play, but he's walked 6 times. He's been hit by 3 pitches. It just seems like he makes things happen when he gets to the plate.
Yeah, and I think that's how he's worked his way into the lineup. If you get on base, no matter how you do it, you're going to play. And that's the thing about this lineup, the depth of the program and the talent on the team is if you're not producing, there's somebody behind you that will. And Coach Van Horn knows that he's going to have to keep everybody engaged. I mean, you have a guy like Jacob Nesbitt that didn't probably play 4 or 5 games in a row, insert him in the lineup, and he had a big 3-run homer last weekend. So everybody's valuable. You need everybody on the team. But yeah, guys like Gregory, I think he had 1,000% on base percentage. He got on base every single time he came to the plate last weekend. I was looking at some numbers. Robert Moore had an 833 on base percentage. I think 10 out of 12 times he was on base. So guys like that are getting on base, and you have some guys that can drive the ball out of the park. It's a recipe for success.
I want to talk to you about Louisiana Tech. Before we do, though, I've heard I go back and watch most of the broadcasts, and you just seem like you really love watching Jackson Wiggins pitch. If when you're a hitter standing in against Jackson Wiggins, you hit. What would that be like?
He's special, and I've talked to Dave about Jackson Wiggins off record and stuff, and he's told me personally, and I think he's even said it publicly. he said he can be as good as he wants to be, which, he just basically saying he almost does not have a ceiling. The thing that's impressed me so much about him is not only is he a guy that can throw 97, 98 miles an hour, but he has really good secondary pitches. He's able to command his slider. He's able to command his changeup and throw those for strikes too. So as a hitter, if somebody is throwing that hard, you have to sit fastball and then just hope that you can recognize the off-speed pitches and just try to make adjustments. But the biggest thing on somebody like that is you have to really shrink down that strike zone, and you cannot chase anything probably above the belt, even though it's probably going to be a strike. You're not going to catch up to it at 98 miles an hour if it's a high strike. You're just not.
I feel like we've seen a few times, he'll throw a 98 mile an hour fastball. You mentioned the hitter sitting on it, and he'll just buckle him at the knees with a 87 mile an hour changeup on the next pitch.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of fans may not know this, and that some that follow the Razorback program might, but Casey Opitz is probably one of the handful of catchers in the country that calls his own pitches. Mm-hmm. So I think that adds a lot to it. He knows kind of as a hitter, hey, what would I be sitting on? And okay, I'm going to do the opposite. And sometimes he's very unpredictable about how he calls a game. There's never any patterns. You don't sit there and go, okay, I'm always going to see a breaking ball, 1 ball and 2 strikes. I'm always going to see a fastball to get ahead, first pitch fastball. So he's not afraid with anybody on the staff to call a variety of pitches, but especially with Wiggins, I think that's what's made him so successful is just how Casey's managed the game when he's been on the mound.
Let's talk about Louisiana Tech this weekend. They're 8-3. They've won 4 in a row. They had the big win over ULM the other night. They were down 3-1, and then they scored 7 runs in the 7th inning. That's always kind of felt like that's been the Louisiana Tech team under Lane Burroughs is they can strike really fast. They remind me a little bit of a Missouri State in the sense that they're one of those regional teams that Arkansas is going to be expected to beat more often than not, but you're not surprised if they come in and then they play hard and maybe come out with 2 of 3.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Burroughs yesterday on a conference call, kind of preparing for the series. And one of the things that came out of our conversation, and I really liked, and I think he really hit the nail on the head with his team, is, hey, we're some of the guys that get passed over by the main big D1 schools, his players. And he said, we kind of play with a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, a little bit of edge. And I think he's right. It's those guys that are really those scrappy ball players, those baseball savvy players that, again, a team like Louisiana Tech is going to pick off a lot of teams this year from a victory standpoint. And Arkansas is going to have their hands full. It's a great environment. I was able to go down there in 2017
mm-hmm.
and call some games, 2016, 2017, I believe it was 2017, and call some games down there in Ruston. And the environment's outstanding, and their crowd's going to be rocking. There's no limit on people that can be out in front of. They have some student housing behind left field,
mm-hmm.
and I think you're going to see that be really crowded out there behind left field wall.
You were there for the 2017 Arkansas comeback, right?
Yeah, that was a crazy game. The wind was blowing out probably 25 miles an hour, and I think Arkansas got down. It might have been close to double digits.
It's 10-1.
They rallied. Yeah, 10-1, and they rallied back. It was a crazy game, and you could just feel the air just kind of let out of that whole stadium when Arkansas just kept continuing to pound the baseball. And it's going to be exciting. The ball flies out of that park, especially depending on which way the wind blows.
It's a different kind of park than what Arkansas is going to see when they get in the SEC. Go to places like Duty Noble and whatnot. When you were playing, what was a little park like this that you kind of that stood out to you that you remember?
Oh, from a regional standpoint, gosh, that's a good question. The stadiums weren't nearly what they are now.
Right.
I always like to go over to, and again, it's not really a regional program, but Stillwater at Oklahoma State was a place that I'd love to go to. They had some great teams in the
mm-hmm.
late 80s, guys like Pete Incaviglia and Monty Ferris and Robin Ventura. It was always just an electric place to go to. I would think that. And then, again, great facilities. Texas A&M was a great place. Their fans were tough, but they were very baseball savvy. So when they would ride you as an opposing player, they'd always talk about your stats. They would never get crude or anything like that. So it would definitely make you laugh on their knowledge of the game.
Yeah, Allie P. Reynolds in the 80s was one of the top stadiums in the country.
Yeah, it really was.
And they've really done a nice job building their new one over there in Stillwater. I don't know if you've got a chance to see it, but that's
I haven't seen it yet. I've heard about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite the ballpark. Troy, just a couple more questions for you. What's it like seeing your old teammate Bubba Carpenter up in the press box every game?
He's definitely a character. I think that maybe the best way to describe Bubba is he adds a lot of flavor to a broadcast. And I really enjoy his insight of what he brings to the game. He definitely has a lot of passion for Arkansas, and it's fun to listen to him call a game.
I think you guys were both outfielders on that '89 team, right?
Yeah, we were. He's a guy that had tremendous talent. He was a redshirted year and was a year behind me, but he's an amazing player. Just a whole huge skill set. He's definitely a 5-tool guy, and he was definitely fun to play with.
All right. Well, Troy, we appreciate your time. Safe travels this week to Ruston, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Hey, thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Troy. Troy Eklund with SEC Network Plus. He'll be on the call this weekend on Cox Sports TV and ESPN Plus as the Razorbacks play Louisiana Tech 3 times. Game times are Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m., and Sunday at 1 p.m. There is some rain in the forecast in Ruston this weekend, a 70% chance of rain on Sunday, and so it seems like there's a good possibility, Seth, that there may be a doubleheader down there between the Razorbacks and the Bulldogs.
Which is something that Van Horn said is not necessarily a bad thing. He wants his team to get some experience playing in a doubleheader.
Troy mentioned the 2017 Louisiana Tech game. That's a perfect segue into our next segment. We're going to look back at that game when the Razorbacks trailed Louisiana Tech 10-1 and came back to win 13-10. We'll do that, and we'll also talk to Lane Burroughs, the Louisiana Tech head coach, as we move on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy. Want more coverage of your home team? Download the WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for WholeHog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today. Welcome back to the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy.
Arkansas at Louisiana Tech this weekend. Game times Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m., Sunday at 1 p.m. All 3 games will be televised by Cox Sports TV. They'll also be streamed on ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus, that is a subscription service. I think about $5.99 a month is the price if you want to watch the Razorbacks this weekend.
I'm not for sure, but I bundle it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty great. Disney Plus, ESPN Plus. I'm not like trying to advertise for ESPN here, but it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think it's $5.99. So basically you're paying $2 a ticket. That beats what they're being sold for on the resale market right now because this is a sold out series. They're only going to allow about 1,000 people into the ballpark this weekend in Ruston. That's basically season ticket holders, official party for both teams, official party being parents and family members, friends. I think each player gets something like 4 passes most of the time for the games, and 100 students at Louisiana Tech, and that's how they get to the number of about 1,000.
That's kind of sad because you know that this game would just be packed
Mm-hmm.
if it was a normal year. Arkansas, I mean, there's a lot of people in South Arkansas that would like to go see the Razorbacks play.
Oh, yeah.
And then all the people that support the Louisiana Tech program would love to see them play the number one team in the nation.
Or in North Louisiana. I mean, you go into Monroe, Ruston, Shreveport. There are a lot of Razorback fans in that area. Of course, they've recruited down there very well in a lot of sports throughout the years. I think of a lot of football players who have come out of the North Louisiana area and in some of those towns, some others up there. 1,000 people. Of course, this is the first of the first three of 5 big games for Louisiana Tech at home over the next week. When Arkansas leaves, Ole Miss is going to come in for a midweek series. And so
it's brutal.
They've got, it's a big opportunity for them, though. I mean, they've got the number one team on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, take a day off Monday, and then here comes the number 3 team, who was previously number 1, on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so Louisiana Tech with a big opportunity this weekend. Arkansas has had this series scheduled, Seth, for quite some time because of the NCAA Indoor Championships that are going to be this weekend at Randall Tyson Track Center on the U of A campus. In the past, there have been times where I can remember one time very well, 2013, when Arkansas played a 4-game series against San Diego State on the same weekend as the NCAA Indoor Track Championships at Randall Tyson, and there was a basketball game at Bud Walton against Texas A&M on that Saturday. And I think there was a doubleheader at Baum that day because of some bad weather. That was right before Tony Gwynn passed away, and he wasn't able to come in with San Diego State. He was the head coach, but he was having some health problems, and he wasn't able to make that trip. That was all in that same weekend. So any time now that Arkansas has NCAA Indoor Track and Field Championships, which is fairly often because of the quality of the indoor track, they try to get baseball out of town that weekend because they don't want them. Now, of course, they anticipated when they set all this up that we weren't going to be in COVID protocol and there would be people going to the indoor track championships. Of course, no fans are allowed in there, and that you'd be having people being able to go to baseball games. It's been limited to about 4,200 people. We'll talk about this here a little bit more, but they're going to allow about 1,500 more people in 2 games through the end of March, bring capacity to about 50% of Baum-Walker Stadium's listed capacity. But Arkansas, Dave Van Horn called Lane Burroughs and said, hey, what do you got on this weekend in 2021? And Burroughs basically told him, he said, well, if you're coming here, it's you. We'll clear the schedule for you. And so Arkansas is going to go down to Louisiana Tech and play these 3 games. And
Lane Burroughs got all that he bargained for when he said it's you, because not only did he get the Arkansas brain recognition from the SEC, he got the number 1 right beside Arkansas too. So yeah, I think any coach mid-major would clear the schedule to have the number 1 team in the country come to their park.
This is the first time that Arkansas has gone to Louisiana Tech since 2017, and that was a memorable series for a few reasons. But before we talk about that real quick, Louisiana Tech has reopened J.C. Love Field at Pat Patterson Park. I don't know which one to call it. I think I typically could just call it Love Field. And then whenever I Google Love Field, I get all these results for the Dallas airport. But I think it's J.C. Love Field at Pat Patterson Park. Their stadium was basically destroyed in a tornado 2 years ago. Heavy, significant damage from a tornado that hit there, I think in maybe it was April, May of 2019. I don't think they played there last year. And then they had this big fundraising drive to basically rebuild the stadium and got it done just in time for this season. You know, it may have been one of those instances where there was still work to be done, even though they were playing in their first few games.
That happens a lot at baseball stadiums.
It does happen at Baum Stadium.
And Mississippi State played in the middle of a year in 2018 with their new dude under construction.
Right. Yeah, and we're seeing that a little bit at Arkansas right now with that new facility in right field. But Louisiana Tech's reopened this ballpark. It would be a huge deal if they could allow more than 1,000 people in there. As Lane Burroughs said, you wouldn't be able to see a blade of grass on the ground because so many people would be sitting out around the stadium. Arkansas expects it to be a real rowdy atmosphere. It has been that way both times that they've gone there. I think they went there maybe 08, 09, somewhere in that time frame, much earlier in Van Horn's tenure, long before Lane Burroughs was the head coach there. I mentioned earlier the connection between those two. Burroughs was hired by Van Horn at Northwestern State in Natchitoches, Louisiana in 1997. Now, never coached a game with Van Horn. Kind of an interesting deal. Van Horn went to Nebraska in December of 97 for the 98 season, and Burroughs stayed behind at Northwestern State. But they did work together for, probably close to a half a year. So there's a good relationship there between those two coaches. But they went there in 2017, and I believe that was Lane Burroughs' first season as Louisiana Tech's head coach. Louisiana Tech won game 1 and looked like they were about to sweep the midweek when they had Arkansas down 10-1 in game 2. A couple of years ago when Louisiana Tech came here to Baum-Walker Stadium for a series, I actually recorded a look back at that game in 2017 with the game broadcast audio from Scott Inman, who was calling it for the Razorback Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. And we put that together, and we're going to replay that today. This is a look back at Arkansas's Game 2 at Louisiana Tech in 2017 when the Razorbacks were down 9 runs, 10-1, and had one of the biggest comebacks in program history.
The last time that Arkansas and Louisiana Tech played 2 years ago, it was an instant classic. Tech had already beaten Arkansas the day before, and the Bulldogs looked on their way to sweeping the midweek series at their home park when they took a 9-run lead in the second inning of Game 2.
Swinging a fly ball into deep right field, right center field. Moving over is Fletcher, and he can't get there. He misread it. It bounces off the warning track, up against the wall. 2 runs are home, all the way around to third base. Goes Ulrich with a triple. It's 10-1.
Scott Inman on the call for the Razorback Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. At the time, Tech had the nation's longest home winning streak of 15 games and had not given up more than 4 runs in a game that year. Arkansas had not come back from a deficit so large in Dave Van Horn's tenure. But the Razorbacks came back with an impressive showing, shutting down Tech's offense the final 7 innings, recording 15 hits, and scoring the game's final 12 runs to win 13-10. Arkansas began the rally with RBI singles by Jax Biggers and Jordan McFarland in the 4th inning. Jake Arledge added an RBI single in the 5th. Then Grant Cook stepped to the plate with Arkansas trailing 10-4.
The 0-1, swinging a long fly ball into deep left center field, drifting back to the track, to the wall. That baby's gone! A 3-run home run by Grant Cook, and the Razorbacks are right back in it.
Cook's homer was the first of 5 home runs over the final 5 innings for Arkansas, which had not hit that many home runs in a game since 2010. Luke Bonfield homered to lead off the 7th inning to pull Arkansas within a run at 10-9. After a Cook double, Carson Chatty tied the game with an RBI single later in the inning. That brought freshman Jordan McFarland back to the plate for the biggest swing of his career.
In a 10-10 game in the 7th with a runner at first. Here's the pitch. Runner going, swinging a fly ball into deep left center. That ball's back at the track, at the wall, it's gone! A 2-run blast by McFarland. And the Razorbacks take a 12-10 lead. Wow!
Arkansas reliever Barrett Lowski did the rest. Lowski entered in the 6th inning and struck out 7 batters, a career high at the time, to close out the comeback.
Lowski set the 1-2 delivery, swing and a miss. He struck it out. The Razorbacks win. Razorbacks win it 13-10. Lowski throws his glove to celebrate. The Hogs come charging out of the dugout with almost as much emotion as Louisiana Tech did last night. They'll glad hand all around. A 9-run come-from-behind victory for the Hogs.
The comeback was the largest for Arkansas since 1998 when Norm DeBryan's team overcame an 11-run deficit to defeat South Carolina at home. It was one of 45 wins in 2017 for the Razorbacks, a quality win that helped Arkansas host a regional later that year. Van Horn reminisced on the game this week.
Well, I remember we lost the day before, and we should have won, and was not very happy. And had a few words and got after him pretty good. And after that game, and then I thought, well, that didn't help because we're down 9-1 after 3. But here we came. I just remember, they might get us out real quick and we'd hit a single and we'd hit a homer. and get us out, 2 base hits, home run. Kind of before they knew what to do. They'd get a couple quick outs and bang, bang, bang. And next thing you know, we're up like 13-9. They didn't know what hit them. And that was a big win for us.
Arkansas hoping that they don't have to have so many heroics when they travel down to Ruston this year in 2021. But regardless, the Razorbacks are going to get ready. The road game is going to prepare them for the SEC. And Van Horn has already said that, and he's ready to see his team perform in that true road environment. It's going to be good. Van Horn also said he doesn't necessarily like to go on the road right before SEC play, but as you mentioned earlier, Matt, the NCAA indoor track championships kind of made sure that they would be on the road, and I think it's going to be a little bit of adversity for this team. And Louisiana Tech, we'll look at them ahead here in just one moment after the break, but they're no team to overlook.
One thought on going on the road. A lot of times, Arkansas, before SEC play, does not play a road series. They might play a midweek road game during spring break, but I guess even by that point, SEC play has started. What you see a lot of times is that they'll play something like Arlington, or they'll play something like the Shriners Classic in Houston. But very rarely do you see them go on the road during those first 4 weeks, in a true road environment during those first 4 weeks of the season. This helps you for a couple of weeks down the line when your first SEC road trip is in Starkville.
Right.
It's a big deal, I think, to go on the road and get this under your belt before SEC play begins.
You're exactly right. Well, we are going to take a look at the week ahead when we come back here on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast.
Massage Envy has been voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. One reason is our great therapists and estheticians. Due to increased demand with our new services in both massage and skincare, Massage Envy is now looking for talented, licensed providers to join our great team. A competitive compensation package and family-like environment are just some of the reasons our providers have worked nearly 10 years with Massage Envy. Looking for a great career? Come by our clinics in Rogers or Fayetteville and apply today.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
Welcome back to the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. Let's take a look at the week ahead, presented by Grease Pig.
Well, we focus a lot on the weekend series, the Razorbacks getting ready to play Louisiana Tech, but the week ahead also includes the Razorbacks' first midweek game of the year against the University of Oklahoma next Tuesday night at Baum-Walker Stadium. It's a 5 o'clock first pitch, and it will be the first game the Razorbacks have had on traditional TV this year. It'll be on SEC Network on Tuesday night. That is going to be the first game where there's going to be expanded capacity inside Baum-Walker Stadium. Capacity's been capped at about 4,200 for the first 7 home games this season. And for the final 7 games of the month of March, the capacity is going to be at about 5,700. And then they will reassess where things are at the end of March. And there is a possibility they could expand capacity further once the Auburn Tigers come to town for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series that begins on April the 1st. Talk more about that in just a moment, but first, I want to remind you that the week ahead is brought to you by our friends at the Grease Pig. For nearly 20 years, they have specialized in serving UA students, faculty, and staff. With 2 locations in Fayetteville on College Avenue and MLK Boulevard, the Grease Pig has experience for all your repair needs and, of course, complete service oil changes staffed with ASE certified master technicians. They also provide tires and alignment services at their location on College Avenue. The Grease Pig, it's all about taking care of you, and they sponsor our week ahead. So we mentioned the Razorbacks will play OU next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the Sooners in a moment. But first, we want to go back to the Louisiana Tech series. And yesterday, we were on a conference call with Lane Burroughs, the Louisiana Tech head coach. Mentioned a little bit earlier, he's a former Dave Van Horn assistant coach, one of 6, I think, Seth, former Van Horn assistants who are D1 head coaches now. Of course, Tony Vitello, Rob Childress, those are the ones everybody knows about. Andy Sawyers, Southeast Missouri State. Chris Curry will come in here to Fayetteville in a few weeks with the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And then the only one that Van Horn's teams won't play this year is Matt Deggs at Louisiana Lafayette. And that's always a program that you wonder you might see in a regional type setting. We were on a conference call with Lane Burroughs earlier this week, and the first question to him was, what are your impressions of Arkansas?
Oh, my God. Watching Friday Night Guy down there a little while ago, we pulled him up. We didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We had a big game last night. Obviously, we know what's in front of us, but, it looks like Walker Buehler pitching. It's real. Look, we got all the reports and talked to all the people that seen them play out in Arlington, and, you get the reports. They're 10th guy of the bullpen settling in at 96, 97. So it's about to be amped up. They're really good. They have a great lineup. They got some older hitters mixed in with some younger guys, and it's just going to be a hard lineup to navigate multiple times through a ball game. And obviously, the pitching is loaded. It's going to be different than what we've seen, but we need to see it. Look, we're preparing this team for conference play, Conference USA. We're preparing this team for hopefully a late run in May and June, and hopefully by the time we get to conference play with Southern Miss in a couple weeks, we'll be prepared. There will be nothing we hadn't seen playing Arkansas and Ole Miss. When I was coaching in the SEC, we always used to say this league prepares you for everything. There's nothing you won't see when you get to a regional, when you get to a super regional, when you get to Omaha that you hadn't already seen in the Southeastern Conference. So that's the challenge with us. We need to go out and play well, continue to get better, and don't prostitute ourselves to the scoreboard so much. Just go out, play, be who we are. Because Arkansas, they're really good. They're really good. Man-to-man, we probably can't line up with them man-to-man. But, we can play hard. We can control what we can control. And just looking forward to a great atmosphere, a great weekend of college baseball. But what I've seen from them is they're really good. They probably are the best team in the country right now. If not, we'll see as the season progresses. But I think we got two of the best teams in the entire nation coming into our ballpark here in the next week.
Dave Van Horn was talking about just kind of how this series came about. He said that you guys were going to come back up here. Do you know a year yet when that's scheduled?
We don't, Matt. We will return. Me and Coach Van Horn have a great relationship. Obviously, I worked for him 1997 to 98, Northwestern State. With him and Rob Childress, we're on the same staff. I was just a little guy on the totem pole, but we'll definitely come back up there probably for a weekend. Talking to Clay, who does most of their scheduling through Coach Van Horn, probably 23, maybe even 24. Scheduling's done so far in advance. When Coach called me about coming here, needed to go on the road this weekend, he said, "Who do you have scheduled?" And I said, "Well, if you're wanting to come here, it's you. We'll clear it off." So a lot can be moved around to schedule. We have not nailed down a date, Matt, but we'll definitely be making the trip back up to Fayetteville and in the near future.
And then one more for you. Since you've been there, you played Arkansas twice. In 17, you split the midweek, and then a couple of years ago, you came up here and took them to a rubber match. What have been your impressions of this series? And it seems like it's been pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it is. I know their coaches real well. Obviously, tons of respect for their program and their coaching staff. And I like playing Arkansas because we're not too far away. We have a lot of Arkansas fans in our area, North Louisiana. So it's a good matchup, a good non-conference. It obviously shows us where we are. It lets us know where we can stack up against the quality program, and you know what you're going to get when you play Arkansas. It's just going to be baseball, man. They're going to line up. They're going to come after you with really good players. There's not going to be a lot of shenanigans and riffraff, and it's just old school baseball. And I love the way they coach, the way they recruit. I love the way they run their program. And, I want to keep this going because it gives us, like I said, a measuring stick of where we measure up in the grand scheme of things with the better programs in the country.
That was Lane Burroughs, Louisiana Tech head coach, talking about the Razorbacks coming in this week. And Seth, it seems to me like this is going to be a series that continues to get played because of the connections between the coaching staffs, probably every other year.
Yeah, I think it would be a smart series to play, in all honesty, between these two teams. You're not very far away. Louisiana Tech seems to be one of the up-and-coming programs. You mentioned Louisiana Lafayette. They were a team that, I can't remember how many years ago, Matt, it was 2 or 3, that they were a top 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. And Burroughs has Louisiana Tech on a projection sort of like that. Not the fact that they're going to be a top 8 seed, but the fact of, his goal is not to be a flash in the pan, but to be in the NCAA tournament every single year. And I think it would benefit both of these programs if Arkansas and Louisiana Tech play each other every year, every other year. And it's an easy road series for Arkansas to travel to in the non-conference as well and get that experience of playing on the road.
Well, and Northern Louisiana is a place where Arkansas recruits. It's important to go down there and have a presence, I think, from a recruiting standpoint, because they're recruiting players out of there. Have you seen, Seth, this video this week? Peyton Stovall. He's the number 1 rated player in the state of Louisiana from Houghton, Louisiana. I think that's how you say it. Houghton, Louisiana. It's near Shreveport, I think. It's in the Shreveport-Bossier City area.
Got to get that bayou.
Yeah.
Houghton.
Oh, man. But, have you seen – he is at a game. I think we've got the audio.
Yes, we do.
Let's set this up. He's playing a high school baseball game. I think it's on the road, and the opposing team and maybe crowd is chanting overrated at him, and then he just launches a home run.
Yeah, it doesn't go well for them.
Let's play this.
He absolutely launched that ball.
And what you can't see is him stare down his bench as he's running the bases.
He got to look back at the crowd a little bit with a little bit of swagger.
Oh, he knew what he did. He knew what he did.
Oh, man. And, I'm no baseball coach, but the launch angle on that ball, fantastic. And I can even tell that.
Yep.
That's like a self-justifying moment for guys. That makes you feel good.
You got to wonder what it's like for him playing too. LSU baseball is such a big deal, even though they haven't been quite what you expect from LSU in the last few years. To be in that state and and it goes back to what Lane Burroughs said, is that there are a lot of Arkansas fans in that northern Louisiana area. And, I think going to Arkansas for some of those players is just as big of a deal or big of a draw as going to an LSU. And it could be that LSU didn't want them.
Yeah. Well, in LSU and Arkansas, when you talk about recruiting battles, LSU hasn't won just a whole lot of recruiting battles against Arkansas. You think about their Friday night starter now is the kid from Ashdown that LSU has. I can't remember his name.
Jaden Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, he did not have a great outing against ORU. And
gave up 8 runs in 1/3 of an inning.
Yeah, not great. But, that's one recruiting battle that Arkansas may have lost. But Arkansas baseball just doesn't lose. I think
it's getting to the point that if Arkansas wants a player, more often than not, they're going to get that player.
Right.
It's not like football where you're one of 30 schools that's offering a player.
Right.
And you don't feel like you've got a very good chance. It's a different thing. Arkansas is getting to the point, I think, in recruiting to where they can say, that's what we need. That's who we want. And more often than not, they're going to get him. Because where would you want to go other than, where else would you want to go other than an SEC school that's going to draw 10,000 people on any given night in normal times?
Yeah.
And play a really, really good national schedule where you're going to get on television 10 to 20 times in any given year, not to mention all the games that are streamed.
Exactly.
And then it's a World Series type team. I'm not saying Arkansas is the only team that can boast those credentials, but there aren't many others who can.
There's not a lot.
Mississippi State, Ole Miss.
And then you think about
LSU, South Carolina, maybe?
The facilities, which Arkansas's new performance center, they're going to have.
That's going to be amazing.
They're going to have everything dedicated to the student athletes, basically. It makes Baum Stadium look cooler, and it adds a few more seats, but it's really for the student athletes. The fact of you can go to the program that does everything that you just said, Matt, but also when it's 32 degrees outside for most of the entire continent of the North America and especially the country of the United States, you can go work indoors. They have a full infield. You can scrimmage indoors if you wanted to. That type of performance, I think, has really set Arkansas apart. Ever since that Walker family indoor facility has come, Dave Van Horn has got a recruiting pitch that people will listen to because he's got their credentials. He's got a pitching coach right now that was being recruited by the Yankees.
Yep.
He's got a hitting coach that's is second to none. He's got the facilities to back it up. He's got the fan base. He's got the SEC revenue. Yeah, there are, like you said, a handful of other programs that can boast that. But I think everything combined, Arkansas is one of the premier destinations for a college baseball athlete.
Speaking of the Yankees and Matt Hobbs, did you hear Lyle Lockhart after his game against Murray State talking about how he got to Arkansas? He was on the postgame show with Phil Elson on the Razorback Sports Network, and Phil asked him how he got to Arkansas. And long story short, Lockhart is good friends with Andy Pettit's son. Andy Pettit's son pitches, I think, at DBU, Dallas Baptist. And the families are good friends. And so I guess when Arkansas showed interest in Lockhart, he reached out to Andy Pettit and, I guess to get some advice. I'm not quite sure, but this was somewhere in that time frame where the Yankees had pursued Matt Hobbs. And long story short, Pettit couldn't say enough good things about what he had heard about Hobbs,
right,
and what his reputation was throughout the industry. And Lockhart basically said that when Andy Pettit said, "Hey, this is what you need to do," this is what I did.
It's a no-brainer, and Andy Pettit says, "Hey, you should probably do this."
So we mentioned Arkansas is going to play Oklahoma next Tuesday night, first midweek game. This is where you really start to see the bullpen get stretched a little bit, and where arms get used. I think it's been tough probably for the coaching staff here over the first few weeks. They played 4 games against SEMO, but the other 2 weekends they played 3 games to get everybody work. I mean, Blake Adams didn't get to pitch until the 8th game of the season, I think. This is a guy they were talking about could potentially be a starter early in the season. So I think that, you get into the midweek, you start to be able to, hey, on Tuesday night, you're going to get an inning, and you're going to get maybe 2, maybe you're going to get a couple of bats. You start playing Tuesday, Wednesday games, and it really makes it, a lot easier for them. But OU comes in. They go into a series this weekend with Arkansas State. They're going to play over in Norman. The Sooners are 6-6 this year. A much different team than what we saw down in Houston last season. Cade Cavalli, their great starting pitcher. He's gone. I think he was a first-round pick in the MLB draft last season. That was a really old team, really old pitching staff, and they didn't get a lot of them back this season. And so pitching has actually been a little bit of an issue for them this year. They played so far in the Frisco Classic and in the Round Rock Classic at a couple of minor league facilities there in Texas. You get outside of the Shriners Classic in Houston or the College Baseball Showdown in Arlington, I think these are the 2 best early season events outside of those 2. In Round Rock, they played Auburn, they played Texas A&M, they played Baylor. They beat Auburn and Baylor. They lost to A&M 8-1, and then they went to Frisco and they couldn't get out. So they played Arizona, Seth, and they lost 20-13.
Whoa!
And then they played them again the next day and they lost 12-1. And so pitching has been an issue, I think, for the Sooners. Now, midweek is a little bit different, but if your weekend starters aren't able to get anybody out, you're not really going to expect that your back of the line bullpen pitchers are going to be able to do it unless one starter just has an amazing performance. We've seen that before.
Yeah.
But interesting game for the Razorbacks and the Sooners next week. Also, this is the first time, with the exception of that fall exhibition in 2019 when OU came over here, this is the first time OU has been here for a regular season game since, I believe, 2011.
Huh.
I think that was the last time they came over here. They were supposed to come. They had a 4-year agreement with OU where in Norman for 1 game, in Fayetteville for 1, back and forth. Arkansas would go to Norman and play. The next year, when OU would come here, there'd be a rainout. Arkansas would go to. In fact, Arkansas played at Norman the night that Bobby Petrino was fired. I was getting ready to leave for Norman, and I got a call. Hey, you might want to stay in town. And they ended up going over there, and I think they got 1 hit maybe that night by an OU pitcher who had this incredible game. I think OU was supposed to come back the next year. It gets rained out, so they didn't play for a while because I can only speculate, but I think it had to do with the fact that Arkansas wasn't getting the home games returned from OU, and they'd been going over to Norman and playing. So I actually like having this series. I think it's an entertaining deal. Down in the area where I grew up in western Arkansas, there's a lot of OU Arkansas crossover there. We talked a little bit about what it's like in northern Louisiana with the Razorbacks and LSU. It's similar like that, along the western border, on the Arkansas-Oklahoma border. This is a good series, and I'm glad to see them playing that again this year.
Yeah, I feel like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are two teams that Arkansas should play one of them every year.
I'm surprised they don't play Oklahoma State more. And I'd like to. We mentioned this with Troy Eklund earlier. That ballpark over in Stillwater what is it? O'Brate Stadium?
I saw it.
I think it's
the
O'Brate
bones
Stadium
of it last year whenever Arkansas went over there. You and I went over to watch the spring scrimmage or fall scrimmage.
Right.
And the bones of it made you kind of drop your jaw. And, Baum Stadium kind of set the precedent. And then now you have programs that are successful.
And they come look at Baum Stadium.
Yeah.
I don't know this firsthand, but I would be shocked if the people from OSU did not come over here and tour Baum in some capacity. Of course, they played in some regionals over here too, and so they've seen it, firsthand in that capacity. But I mean, I've seen this so many times where it'll be the day before a series starts. I saw this 2 years ago when Tennessee was in town. There are Tennessee people touring the stadium. What have you got? We're getting ready to do a baseball renovation. When TCU was here in the 2019 regional, their AD and Jim Schlossnagel, their head coach, walked around taking pictures, taking videos. This is what we need in our renovation for our ballpark. So you see that quite often. And I know that, all ballparks to some extent kind of look the same. But when I look at the new one in Stillwater, I see a lot of elements of what Arkansas has at Baum Walker.
Compared to their old one, too.
Oh, my.
Their old one, for what it was, you're like, this is a piece of junk for a program that it has this much history.
Well, we talked about this about Troy. In the 80s, that was the ballpark. I mean, Alley P was the ballpark in the 1980s.
And it's not the 1980s anymore.
No, it still felt like it was stuck in the 1980s.
I think that something Frank Broyles doesn't get enough credit for was moving that stadium out to Baum Walker. He gets a lot of credit for that. But something that I have read that is just stuck with me is the old George Cole Field where the parking lot is now the practice facility.
That's where the practice field is,
for the baseball or football team. He said he didn't want to walk upstairs to get into Baum Stadium.
Mm-hmm. They wanted to walk down from the concourse just like they had done at Bud Walton.
Yes.
Which was built at about the same time.
That actually, I can see a lot of elements from other ballparks stealing that. That was pretty ingenious.
Yeah.
So the fact of you just walk in on the right level and you walk down into your seats. It's something that seems so simple, but is really adds to the effect of that. And then the concourse, a lot of college baseball programs don't have that. You just don't think about the fact of you just take it for granted because you've been to, the Naturals at the AA park or the Travelers if you're in Central Arkansas and you go to the AA park and that's what they have is a concourse and all that stuff. So you're like, okay, yeah, that's natural. Oklahoma State, when we walked in there, I was shocked that unless you're in your seat, you cannot see the game.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you are in your seat or walking around your seat.
This is at the old ballpark.
At the old ballpark, correct. You could not. Now, you walk by there and you're like, that's Baum Stadium in a way of they have the concourse. You can see the field from however many different views. I think that Baum set the precedent and is still continuing to be a leader in college baseball parks.
So many minor league parks have been built in the last 20 years or so. And I've heard somebody say that minor league parks have bathrooms in the suites because Baum Stadium did it first. Just little things like that.
Yeah.
I'd love to get over to Stillwater and watch a game. They opened that stadium against UALR, and I got to catch a little bit of that. And it'll be neat once we're past all of the COVID protocols and people are able to gather more en masse again to see what a real big game day is going to be like over there in Stillwater. They've got a good team. They're undefeated. I think that or they were coming into the week. I think they were one of 6 teams along with Arkansas that were undefeated coming into this year. And so you always watch for OSU is not a little regional team, but you always watch for regional teams to see what they're doing throughout the season because, maybe OSU is a top 16 seed, but if they're not, then you start thinking about, okay, that could be the 2 line coming into Fayetteville. It could be a tough team.
It could also be if they are a top 16 team and Arkansas makes that super regional or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could be a team you're matched up with in the super.
Yep, you never know. So Arkansas and Louisiana Tech this weekend, as we said, 6 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock on Sunday. If they play on Sunday, 70% chance of rain. Doesn't look too good for them to get that game in. Maybe they end up playing a doubleheader. I don't know how that works on Cox Sports TV if they play a doubleheader, but I know all the games will be streamed on that ESPN Plus broadcast. As we mentioned, Brett Dolan and Troy Eklund will have the call. It'll be a hometown call from the road. Kind of interesting there on CST this week. We'll be back next week. We will talk about the Louisiana Tech series. We'll record this after the OU game, so we'll have some thoughts from that first midweek game. And then it's time to start talking about conference play. Alabama comes in on March 19th through 21st for 3 games to begin the SEC season.
The thing I like about baseball is you get about 3 weekends of non-conference, and then, hey, you're right into conference, and these are the games that matter.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
And they all matter.
Yeah, they all matter.
You get to a point, and it's like, okay, you don't know if does this really matter? And then you look back at the end of the season, it's like, okay, well, you swept Missouri in week 1, and that turned out to be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that extra game.
I always really enjoy the SEC. I mean, I enjoy every SEC series, but there's something about those first couple of SEC series, I guess just because the games are a little bit bigger, they mean a little bit more.
I think the weather
I really like
too.
it. Yeah. Well, you never know what you're going to get
but,
in late March. I remember I saw him play LSU one time down in Baton Rouge, and it was like 80 degrees in Baton Rouge, and I was watching the game with about 6 inches of snow outside my door in Fayetteville. So you never know what you're going to get in late March in Fayetteville. But hopefully we get pretty good weather for that OU game next week. Time change this weekend, so it'll be a little bit later in the day when they play that. Just a neat time of year, I think.
You can almost taste it in the air, Matt. Yep. You can almost taste it.
All right, for Seth Campbell, I'm Matt Jones. We appreciate you joining us here on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.